topics with the best industry experts, influencers, and remarkable personalities. So today we're going to talk about the significance of blockchain interoperability, and we're excited to have our two guests today. So from Coinweb, so this is our full disclosure, it's our portfolio company, right? So, but still, please meet Toby Gilbert, who's the CEO and the founder of Coinweb. He's a seasoned digital asset investor and entrepreneur. And then Alexander Kjeldaas. I really apologize if I mispronounced. I did my best. Yes, who's a lead architect at Coinweb and a former senior software engineer at Google. So, hi guys, and good to see you on the show today.
Super happy
Thank
to
you
be
for
here.
having us, sir.
Yeah. So before we start, just a quick reminder for our community that you can write your questions right here in the chat. Doesn't matter if you're connecting through YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, Twitter, or Facebook Live. So our moderators will collect the questions and we'll ask them at the second half of this show. So without further ado, like those are like these are amazing experts in the field. So can you really briefly tell us about your background? How did you end up like working in the Web3 space? Who wants to start?
Alexander, I'd like you to go first because he's unbelievably modest. So I may add to what he has to say afterwards.
Okay. You're planning this. No, my background is in tech. Briefly, I worked, as you mentioned, I worked for Google for many years. I worked few early in my career. I did work on the Linux kernel and security and cryptography. There, I've done a few startups in security and machine learning, and sort of an all-round engineer. Video conferencing, search engine I worked on also, and I joined the Coinweb team back in 2017, and met Toby and Knut, the CTO. And we just have a lot of fun doing this very interesting work. Yeah, been there ever since.
Nice.
So I'm really happy that I let Alexander go first because I knew he was going to approach it like this. So Alexander also led like the Google Hangouts and like the Google Meets teams. He also patched the original Bitcoin core in the area of thread security. So he's mentioned in the Bitcoin GitHub for fixing it effectively. So he's very modest, hence why I have to jump in. But Toby Gilbert, CEO, co-founder of Coinweb. I've been involved in the project since the end of 2017. I've led the project and took over investing in it from early in 2018. And it's where we've got to today. Since then, has been a real roller coaster. We've gone through two different bear markets. We're in our third, and my background is in telecoms for the past 15 years, where I've built, operated, and exited 3 successful telcos.
Perfect. No, thank you. It's an honor to be here with you guys. And, so let's jump right into it, right? So, what do you think about the interoperability? What do you consider even as a concept of blockchain interoperability, and how do you personally envision it?
But if I give it to you at a high level in lay terms, before Alexander jumps in and gives you a bit more of a technical explanation. I would very much say that there's cross-chain and multi-chain, and this is a very clear difference between the two. So we get asked a lot, who are our competitors, for example, and a lot of them are multi-chain. So for example, Polkadot, they take an approach whereby you can set up numerous different blockchains within their ecosystem. And then they provide a platform that's interoperable between those different blockchains. Our approach is different to that, which is to say there are a number of blockchains in the market today, and they have different uses, different functionality, and so on and so forth. And we allow users to then jump between the functionality and the use of those blockchains. So we're effectively enabling the communities of those different blockchains, opposed to a multi-chain interoperability system, whereby they say, you know, Ethereum, Elrond, you know, Solana, forget about all of that. We're going to try and build our own community and draw those existing communities and start it from scratch and create that ecosystem. So we're the former opposed to the latter. And without interoperability, there's been this whole concept that people have been talking about for the past 2 years, and they still do, which is a bit of tokenism, when they talk about one chain to rule them all. And we are very much believers that different chains have different use cases. And therefore, in the event that you are able to build or want to build a solution that is going to really be future-proofed, is going to be very useful, then you need to be able to draw off the functionality from several different chains and build in an extraction layer above those chains. And that's really what interoperability in a nutshell is trying to deliver, which is really about delivering mass adoption, real world adoption. And that's our focus, and that's what our mission is. But Alexander will give you more of a technical explanation.
So Alexander, maybe you will do a segue to the following use case, right, of interoperability, and try to explain it through this practical concept.
Yeah, I guess most people maybe think about interoperability as the ability to swap a token from one chain to another, or the ability to wrap a token, or similar. And that's I guess the use case that people are most familiar with. But I think that is one type of interoperability that is very common. There are different types of bridge systems that use separate chains and stuff like that. We see a lot of breakdowns in that. The issue is often that when you put two systems together and you have some sort of link between them, that becomes the weakest point and the place where things are attacked. But I think ideally, and this is sort of where we're coming from a slightly different angle. So what we started with is this concept of deterministic computations. So those are computations where everything, all the inputs are known beforehand, and when that's known, you don't need consensus. And when you don't need consensus, then you get a lot of different properties. But basically, we think that interoperability could potentially improve on things instead of just deteriorating security, for example, or liveness and things like that. So we think that if you have a good interoperability system, you might get better data integrity, liveness, that is, for example, avoiding getting stuck, for example, in the Terra situation when the blockchain stopped, or Solana that also stopped at various occasions, that you can sort of have multiple blockchains that you can live on and therefore have this liveness property. There's another property called consistency property, where you want to ensure that when something happens on one chain, it must happen on the other chain, which is very, very tricky to get, but it's possible. If you get those properties, then you get a real sort of layering of the blockchain system, where you can say that interoperability is abstracting over the underlying underlying chains and give you access to all those different chains. So yeah.
So with this, maybe I can specify another. You touched upon really interesting matter, which is layers, right? We often hear like layer 0, layer 1, layer 2 solution, right? You know, and a lot of people are lost. What the hell are those layers? Explain in simplified terms. What does it mean?
Before Alexander goes into that, I think it's very important that I think that our industry is awash with a glossary, effectively. That people from the industry keep on coming up with, either to make themselves sound very, very intelligent, or to baffle other people. But if we're to boil it down, which Alexander is just about to do for you, because I can see he's chomping at the bit too, that they are relatively simple concepts. Which we will try and deliver, and sometimes the lines are slightly blurred as well at the same time, because I don't think even the people that come up with the glossary know what they're trying to communicate.
Yeah,
let's go in simplified terms. Layer 0, layer 1, layer 2. What are the?
No, it's definitely not that simple.
Yeah. So okay, so we when we talk about layer 1, that is sort of the simplest. So layer 1 is what we call the traditional blockchains, the original Bitcoin and Ethereum, etc. But those blockchains, they do basically everything in one system. So they have consensus, they have availability, they have a sort of execution engine. They have some sort of language that they execute. And Bitcoin is very simple. The language is basically, I can move my tokens around, or I can move the right to move a token to somebody else. I can say that you have now the right to move the token, and having the right to move the token means that you own the token. That's sort of definition of ownership in Bitcoin. And then you have the EVM, where the execution engine is this instruction set, but it's still tied into that. When you create a new block, you agree on who's able to create a new block. That's the consensus. Then when you run a node, you assume that there's availability of the data. That has sort of been skimmed over, but there's a lot of improvements in the availability area these days. And then they have to execute the code. And there comes layer 2 into the picture, because what layer 2 does is it says, okay, if we have consensus, we have somebody that decided, we have a system that decided what is the new data coming in, and then we can actually do execution of that in a different system. So we can say that we have a lot of data, but actually figuring out what that data means, that is a different system. What's super interesting about layer 2 is that layer 2 is typically a deterministic computation. It's sort of, you can assume that the data exists in the blockchain, and assuming that everyone agrees on what the input data is, then the output, given that the computation is also on the blockchain, you know what to execute, then the output is given. There's no question about what the output should be. But on layer 1, where you need to agree on what the input is, then you can't know what the output is. You can't know the output of the computation until you have figured out what you want as input. But you can separate those two things, and that's very powerful. And then on layer 2, there are basically 2 different systems that we use to make it really efficient to validate that computation. So we have zero knowledge systems, and then we have those systems that we use. We use a validation system called RDoC, which is referee delegation of computation, which is kind of similar to TrueBit, where you can basically you can have an interactive protocol, or you can run that protocol on chain, and you can figure out who is correct if you have two different choices of what that computation output was supposed to be. So that's layer 2. And what's really nice about layer 1 and layer 2 is that layer 2, since it has this really nice proof and validation methods, you don't need that many nodes in layer 2 compared to what you necessarily need in layer 1. Layer 1 is very critical. It's layer 1 that can sort of censor, for example, censorship, removing data availability. All that's very critical stuff. You need a lot of nodes to fix that. But when you have the deterministic computation, you can have fewer nodes. And if you go on the zero knowledge route, in a sense, those systems basically outsource a lot of computation to one supercomputer, and then they just deliver the proof, which can be easily verified by anyone. So you just need this sort of one big computer. So that's layer 1. Then you have.
So I can hear kids in the background here.
By now your kids are helping us not to you see. By now your kids are helping us not to be completely lost in the technical side of it, because I think half of our audience understood maybe 50% of what you're saying, and this is the challenge when Alexander is he's super smart. So Toby, maybe you can chime in and help us to get a lighter version of Alexander's.
Absolutely. Look, Alexander and I, we do this all day long, but within the team. So layer 1 traditional type blockchains themselves, as you know them, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, so on and so forth. Layer 2 are effectively platforms that sit above the layer 1 existing blockchains, and then they take the heavy lifting of the computation out of those blockchains above them, and then they can offer speed and scaling, as blockchains themselves are traditionally known to be rather slow and expensive and cumbersome. So if you take the heavy lifting out of those blockchains and just allow those blockchains to do the computations that they need to do, the minimal computations, then you can draw the heavy lifting out of it. And layer 0 is where effectively you're getting a bit of a combination between layer 1 and layer 2. By way of example, you have Cardano, where they have a layer 1 blockchain, but they also enable a whole load of functionality specific to their own ecosystem, that takes the computations away from their own blockchains and allows you smart contract frameworks and so on and so forth. They're also coming up with the term now, which is layer 3.
Which is obviously very simple. That's all. But layer 3 is also just basically another layer 2 that is inside of layer 2, basically. Layer 3 and layer 2, layer 3 and layer 4, those kind of things, and many layers, they have that in the zero knowledge space, but they are all basically similar because they have the property that they're deterministic. So layer 1 is very different because it deals with a non-deterministic. Layer 0 and 1, they deal with non-deterministic, basically figuring out who is allowed into the party. Like you're the doorman, and there's a lot of people that want to get in, and who are you selecting? And it's quite important that that role is very different from the role of optimizing computation, which is at the higher levels.
Can you bribe the doorman? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Well, that's called a 51%.
That's called a 51%
network, or a 51% attack, or a 3/4 attack, depending if we're in proof of work or proof of stake, right?
Yeah, then you're trying to take over, right? Then you're trying to the doorman, so that
no, we're not tipping the doorman. We're rushing the door in nightclub terms. You've given up on trying to give him a £50 note. We're all just going to raid it.
Exactly, yeah. But layer 0, maybe we can go to layer 0 a little bit, because layer 0 is sort of a new kid on the block for the last year or so.
The only thing, Alexander, I apologize, under 1 minute, because we have 10 questions from our audience. We want to also give them the chance to ask you directly questions.
Okay.
You have 1 minute for layer 0.
Okay, layer 0. Layer 0 is this thing, and it's not because Polygon and Cosmos and some of these that sort of are they're sort of closed systems. They have one consensus system and interoperability system that works across these parachains or these chains that use the same consensus system. So at this sort of the core of their system has both consensus and interoperability. And therefore people have said that, oh, let's call the interoperability system layer 0. But that is sort of, to me, it's a little bit confused terminology, because we have interoperability at layer 2 as well. And we have, and actually Coinweb that we're working on is doing interoperability, something you can call deterministic interoperability, where it's completely separated from consensus. It has nothing to do with consensus, and it's sort of a completely separate layer. So it doesn't really belong there at layer 0. But it depends on different projects have actually different terminology when it comes to that.
Yeah, talking about classification, different types of, like, different mechanism, how do you approach different types of ontology and taxonomy. So yeah, of course, if you go there, like, this is going to be an hour conversation, maybe a few hours. Okay, so if you don't mind, let's hear real questions from people who want to understand, like, better what we were just talking about. So Manu from YouTube is asking, so do you think we'll ever solve the blockchain trilemma, and is there a project close to solving this problem?
Yeah, Coinweb.
Well, we have
shameless plug.
So, like, mic drop.
Yeah, where do you want me to go with that, Constantin?
Listen, don't kill the messenger. This is a question.
No, it's a very important point. Our industry is filled full of very smart people, a lot of whom are young guys who are coming up with architecture from scratch to implement blockchain solutions to solve the trilemma, and which is counter to traditional technology. The microchips that are used in the majority of devices today, the basis of which was invented in the late 70s. And it's just been improved upon and improved upon and improved upon to get to where we are today. A lot of blockchain technology that we're seeing come out has been almost thought up from scratch, which is all well and good until you try and load balance any sort of real transactional values on it. And then you see it come under strain, and then you see problems like Alexander mentioned earlier, like with Solana, let alone Terra Luna. I mean, that's a disaster. But I think, and what Alexander will answer, and to answer that question, we've taken some tried and tested technology like RDoc that Alex touched on a minute ago, and we're integrating that with other technologies like WebAssembly with innovative blockchain technology, and we're merging it together to try and solve these problems. And I think we look around the space today, and there's a reluctance to do that from a lot of guys that are, they don't have the experience of Alexander and Knut. And, we've got 54 devs on our team. And at the moment, a lot of these guys have come from similar types of background. And other guys have come, they're fresh out of the box, and, they're coming up with blockchain architecture from scratch. But we're merging it all together. And there is a reluctance to do that within this space, to be able to solve those problems and say, oh, that's real world technology, that's old technology. We shouldn't be merging that in with these new concepts and ideas and making that happen. And that's what we're doing here and we think that's going to be the solution as how we can contribute to the trilemma.
So we're gonna go to some like really blitz mode, if you don't mind. So like, we'll tell 1 minute for one question to make sure we have all the answers, because I want to read one comment that's more like, so from YouTube. So Alexander has so much to teach. He sounds like a blockchain Einstein. So just to elevate your ego a little bit. Okay. So talking about the interesting comment that you touched, Toby, an interesting question. So I will. So Satoshi Meta from YouTube is asking. So are layer 2 projects really the future of a blockchain? What will make users keep their activity on layer 2s while there are strong layer 1 competitors with supposedly 5,000 TPS?
Well, I'm going to jump in on that one immediately and just say as a fire answer that we are not looking to drag away communities from other blockchains. We are trying to provide a solution that makes existing blockchains more usable, and thus bring those communities together. So when all this kind of concept of, an Ethereum killer or these other terms, this is the dead opposite to what we're looking at, and thus what we don't believe in.
Got it. So that brings us to next question. Ahmad is asking from YouTube, in your opinion, could blockchains be the baby steps towards something bigger in the crypto industry? And do you think there will be a superior technology that will make blockchains obsolete?
They're the basis of the crypto industry. Crypto doesn't exist without blockchain. And if I
Yeah, a blockchain is basically a database. A database is used for all data processing. It's a different system. It's a decentralized database. We will have databases forever. We might call them something different as the technology evolves, but if we still call them the blockchains, they will be there forever.
Yeah, that's what I think he meant.
Just to expand upon that, I think it's important, Ahmed, is to say that if you've got different parties that are unconnected, so thus a distributed ledger, that are looking to confirm blocks, there is a CapEx and an OpEx. The CapEx is the equipment, the servers, effectively, that are being used to confirm those blocks. Those are mining rigs. And there is an OpEx, which is the manpower and is the electricity to run those rigs. And then, therefore, if there's a CapEx and OpEx, there needs to be a return on it. And the return is a token. And to be able to verify those blocks, to build those blocks together, thinking about Tetris, if we really want to boil it down, there needs to be a reward. And the reward is a token, and that is what crypto is. So DLT and crypto are fully integrated into one another. One doesn't exist without the other.
Yeah. But there will be lots of advances when it comes to the basic functionality on availability and scalability and these things, and ties a little bit back to the previous question on layer 2. Layer 2 currently, if you have a traditional layer 1 underneath, then definitely layer 2 is the solution for everything. Yeah. But there will be probably layer 1s that incorporate the layer 2 technologies that we have now. So they have better proof systems, they have better validation proof systems and stuff like that, so that they can get good security with basically fewer nodes, cheaper, faster, better. So, and then some of those will call themselves a layer 1, but in the old classification, they would be both layer 1 and layer 2 in one system.
Yeah. Well, we have a bunch of questions regarding Polkadot and Cosmos, but you already touched upon this, so we're not going to go there. So, but there's more of a personal question to Toby, and then I'll segue with another question about Coinweb. So Ronaldo from 7 from YouTube is asking, so kind of curious, what made you believe that blockchain is the future of the internet, and is there a specific event in your life? This is a brief question.
Well, yeah, absolutely. There is actually. I'll give it to you quick. I was on a beach in Goa, India. I'd been involved in a partnership for 7 years with Knut Vinger, who's our CTO, and he was sitting down and he was explaining blockchain technology to me. So this is early mid-December 2017. And he was saying, you've got to think about it like email systems. The early email systems back in the day would only allow you to send one email within a single email client. So in modern day terms, we've got Hotmail and AOL and whatever else, Gmail, you couldn't send an email, this is before those clients, but just use it as an example, between a Gmail account and Hotmail account. I was like, really? He's like, no, if you had one email client, you could only send an email within it. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound very useful. He's like, that's where blockchain is today. So if you build a solution on top of one blockchain, and anything happens to that blockchain, like it fails or it becomes too expensive or too slow, Ethereum, for example, or if you built on top of Terra Luna, then whatever the project was that you had built on top of that would die, or it would be rendered useless effectively. I was like, well, how can anyone take that risk? How could you go and spend lots and lots of money effectively building a solution, a project or a company, whatever it may be, on top of one particular blockchain? He goes, no, exactly. And that's why how I kind of got hooked when I became a believer in the space, because he said, what needs to happen to be able to forward this and for mainstream adoption to take place is so you can build across these different chains. Just in case one fails or something happens, it becomes too expensive or too slow and so on and so on, you can then migrate. I went, well, that's natural. That happens in all other areas of technology. He goes, well, not in blockchain. And that was at the end of 2017. And that's what made me believe in it. It just made sense. It was common sense. It was just common sense. There was nothing else.
No, it's your aha moment. And I think it's very smart, because if you think about it, it's risk management. You simply cannot, put all your eggs in one basket, and you have to make sure that it's security, risk management, like, in any software development, right? You mentioned SFTP protocol with emails, but it pertains to any technology. So yes. So which brings us to another question. So about the French Bull from YouTube is asking, so Coinweb has been in development since 2017, as you mentioned, I think. So how much has changed compared to the original idea, and are you planning to incubate projects as well? I guess he's asking on top of Coinweb.
It's changed quite quickly.
Answer this? Or Toby?
Sure. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. So I guess I think that there's been some revelations along the way. In the beginning, we had we had quite narrow ambitions. But then we basically it sort of changed around 2018, I think, where we got we sort of worked on this problem of how to be able to prove things on different blockchains, and at the same time be able to use different blockchains, proving and using. And then we looked at TrueBit and RDoc at the time for this, which were the scalability solutions, and we sort of combined that with using the layer 1 as availability, and then basically out of this thinking for a while, Coinweb sort of came out of that. It's just a bunch of people. We were just constantly going back and forth on this problem, and then it sort of appeared out of that. And then when we had that, then sort of the scope exploded.
Perfect. And then there's the last question which I'll skip for today, almost the last, right? So Kaori Megumi from YouTube is asking, like, please tell us about the Coinweb digital wallet. So is this complete? Is this where can we find more information?
Okay, so the Coinweb digital wallet is going to be delivered in September. It'll be available on the Apple App Store and the Google Play stores. I would say equally, if not more exciting, the multi-tenancy wallet that we're building for adoption, which is whereby we have 70% of it remains fixed, and then 30% of it's white labelable. You can choose your sections, And then it comes with fully integrated fiat rails covered by multiple licenses all around the world, a full ops team that's already in place and transacting, is really going to drive immediate adoption of the platform whilst we're building in a permission state before mainnet launch. And it's at mainnet launch that we fully expect the network effect to kick in. But so we have, as I said, the Coinweb wallet, which is quite innovative. And then on the other side, we have the multi-tenancy wallet. So you can come along and we will build that for you, alongside you, issue a cross-chain token, which I think we're going to touch upon later, which is really groundbreaking. Like the way in which we're doing this, no one else is doing this. And the functionality that throws off, it's just exciting. Thanks to Alexander, I'm mad. And that's going to be released first week of November of this year. Of this year.
That's important, you know, like,
yeah,
because a lot of ecosystems, as you know, promise, and then they like say, okay, maybe we delivered a little bit later, like say postpone, and the community, to say the least, are not happy, right? You know, so in your case, why we personally also respect and love Coinweb team, because they actually deliver, you know, like, and that's really important, that you can see that, you know, people might be skeptical. I'll be honest, like we hear, like, you know, so a lot of people concerned, oh, what's happening to the price of the token, et cetera, et cetera. But what I want to emphasize on our side, like as people who supporting like the project, is not only because, you know, we are the supporters and we have to show it. It's because you have to look at the long-term strategy. If you look at any layer 2 or layer 1 solutions, there's cycles. You can see clearly that none of them in the first year or the first 2 years even like actually, like, you know, pump like incredibly. It takes time to build community. It takes time to build infrastructure, and the guys are working day and night to do that. And you just have to, you know, basically follow the news, and you see they're transparent, they're public, they're like answering all the questions. I think that is important, and you have to focus on this, and then expect first milestone September and then November, right?
Well, I think there's something really important just to add to that in 30 seconds, which is we've already built 2 DeFi projects on top of Coinweb, on the component working parts of Coinweb, as proof of concept. And they turned in something a little bit more than proof of concept. So that's OnRamp and Blockfort. And they've been in live prod since late December 2020. And we have transacted via the Coinweb platform, being written down to multiple underlying blockchains, millions of transactions that represent $160 million worth of sales of stable token stability issued from the Coinweb platform. And those projects have come along with compliance, regulatory licenses in loads of different jurisdictions, you know, anti-fraud, you know, all these weird and wonderful tricks that hackers get up to. So we've learned hand in glove working with that team what we know today. So we very much hope that when the Coinweb wallet gets released and the multi-tenancy wallet, that we're almost battle tested and seasoned. So, you know, of course there'll be a testing period, like with any new product being released, but we've been knee deep in this for the past 2 years, learning what works, credit card acquiring, SWIFT, SEPA, local account to account rails, different regulations, how they change, what you can do, what you can't do, which helps us refine the products that we're talking about releasing at the end of this year.
Perfect. So any closing words also, Alexander, Toby?
Yeah, I think I understand it's difficult to sort of wrap your head around this this area, but I think it makes sense to maybe just focus on what you see as giving value, and what you can see in what we're doing is that we're trying to at least enhance the value that already exists, which is sort of an intuitive good thing to do, and then yeah, I know I don't really know how to. It's really difficult to sort of evaluate stuff when if you don't manage to wrap your head around it. But I'm at least trying to be available in chat and Telegram and the various places to answer questions. If you have questions, feel free to go on the Telegram group and ask. And we're trying to be there to help the community.
Yeah, I've got one last thing to say, but this is like really, really important. I've been on calls for the past 10 days with the heads of the labs divisions of probably the top 5 exchanges out there today. Everyone happens to be interested in us. And a general theme keeps on breaking through at the moment, which is, oh, you're interoperable, you're layer 2. Okay, we get that. What's your route for adoption? What's your product? And everybody is absolutely focused on what the adoption and go-to-market strategy is, which is completely correct, because without customers, there is nothing. But at the end of the day, if you do not look exceptionally carefully at what the underlying protocol is and how robust it is, then people pile into a product. And that's what you're seeing today from, CeFi, DeFi, Terra, Celsius, and all of this, with significant amounts of funds moving into it, billions and billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. And then there's an oops moment. Oh, well, maybe that wasn't as well thought through as we thought it was. And $40 billion just evaporated in 48 hours. And so I think there's going to be a lot more focus now on what these underlying protocols are, how robust they are, to support relatively large amounts of money that has the promise of growing exponentially. And I think that's going to be a key thing to look at and keep an eye on over the next 12 to 24 months.
100% agree. Yeah, it's better to start slow, but be consistent on your promises. Absolutely. And make sure that security is intact, that as you mentioned, legal and compliance part is important. I know you're working with some exchanges you mentioned, and that's exciting. I'm sure you're going to have some news to share more about this part. And yeah, listen, I personally enjoy talking to you. Like, we're happy to talk for hours, but we want to try to make it like, this show is very concise, right? And we'll be happy to have you more, right? Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Alexander, for your answers. And again, thank you everyone for joining BullCaster today. As you know, it's a crypto talk show for investors, for partners, for remarkable personalities. And you can listen to us every time at 3 p.m. UTC on YouTube Live or any other platforms that you were able to connect every Friday. So with this said, we really appreciate your time, guys, and we wish you success. We want to see all the deliverables in September and November, and we'll be the first to test your products.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers. Right, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.